Welcome back to WHDT World News. We're talking with Professor Murray Sabrin about the manipulation of gold prices and what it means for the global economy. Murray, what does the manipulation of gold mean for the world economy? You were talking about China just before the break.
Well, it means that the people are losing faith in the dollar as the world reserve currency because everything is priced in dollars. Oil and basic commodities are priced in dollars. And so if these sellers of these commodities do not have confidence in the value of the dollar, they're going to look for alternative means of payment. And the Chinese have made some noise about de-dollarizing the world economy in terms of using other currencies to buy these basic stuffs around the world. So I wouldn't be surprised in the next few years is that the Chinese yuan and maybe even the euro or other currencies take the forefront, and maybe we get a new global currency that's backed by gold. Who knows? We don't know where this is headed because we're in really uncharted territory. Remember, we've been on a world fiat monetary system since August 1971 when President Nixon defaulted on the U.S. dollar. No one talks about that default that took place, and that default led to terrible things, an explosion in prices since 1971. But I believe that we're seeing the last chapter of this grand experiment that been in place for more than 40 years of a paper money world, and it's not ending. It's ending very badly because the world economy is very sluggish. Unemployment is high throughout the world, and this leads to economic unrest, social unrest, and it's not a very good way to run a world economy when so many young people can't find productive jobs.
Murray, is China actually importing physical gold?
I just read that not only are they buying up all the gold that's being mined in China, they're also importing gold. And so this means that they're really hungry for the real money. Gold is real money. Paper is a claim to real money. People lose sight of that, especially mainstream economists. They think paper money or digital money, which is the entry in our computers, which most of our money is based on, is real money. No, real money is stuff that is traded, has been traded historically, because it has value in the marketplace. People value gold, silver, copper, nickel, things that are tangible items. That's money because in a barter economy, you have to have something tangible to trade. You don't trade paper in a commodity economy because paper has very little value. And so we are seeing the ramifications, the consequences of this paper money world. And as I said, I think we're going to see major changes in the domestic and international monetary systems over the next several years.
Murray, you mentioned a gold-backed global currency, and we saw at a recent G8 summit, probably about a year ago, that Vladimir Putin was actually holding up a mock-up of a global coin, a coin that would represent a global currency. Is that a reality? Are we seeing that come into fruition?
I don't think it's a reality yet. I think there's a lot of tension going on now between the United States and its trading partners, its major trading partners, which is China and some of the Middle Eastern nations as well. Remember, there was talk by Saddam Hussein and others of having a gold dinar being used to trade oil, and maybe that was the tipping point that led to the invasion of Iraq. But hopefully we'll know that story soon enough. But the point is, other nations that have gone through hyperinflation, whether it's in Eastern Europe, Russia, China, South America, they know what the pain is when you go through a hyperinflation, chaotic economy. We just saw that in Zimbabwe. And so people are very nervous around the world that the United States has lost grip of its monetary system, of fiscal policy, that it's spending and borrowing at levels that are unheard of in world history. And so they're looking to protect their own economies from the chaos that could be ensuing the dollar starts to collapse in the not too distant future.
Okay, so Murray, let me ask you this. Based on what you're saying here, why then do we see that the economy continues or appears to continue to chug along? People are still going to work. There's still food on the shelves. There's still gasoline in the pumps. And people seem to be content. How can, in the midst of all this economic instability, why does it appear that things are going along as usual?
That is a great question, and I've always asked that myself. I think it just shows you the resiliency of the free enterprise economy, as hampered as it is with taxes and government regulation and all this debt go to the federal government. I think it shows you when you have enough free enterprise, you can still get goods and service to the people at reasonable prices. When you go shopping, you look at all these high-tech items that have come down enormously in price over the last 10, 20 years, and it will continue to do so. Where we see price pressure is in rents and housing prices. New York City, the median price of an apartment, a rental apartment, is over $3,000 a month. Prices in these urban areas are going through the roof. That's an example of another bubble being formed. But nevertheless, the average family today, because of this easy money policy, is seeing their costs go up, their expenses go up, and their wages being stagnant. That's why the average family's living standards are under pressure because of all this easy money.
Now, we just saw recently President Obama has stated that he's going to push back the enforcement of the Obamacare fines, meaning that they can selectively move the date around when they will activate the fine process, which means the fine itself, $95 if you do not have insurance annually, or 1% of your annual income. This is how the IRS is going to penalize Americans who don't have insurance. That is that penalty Obama has pushed back. Why do you believe Obama has now pushed back those penalties?
Well, because this is a disaster that's unfolding that's unprecedented, I think, in American history, that you have a massive takeover of the healthcare system in the sense that you have so many regulations that will determine how to get healthcare, what price it will be, what coverage you can get. This is just an amazing display of raw government power in the big sector of the economy, healthcare, which is about 16 to 18% of the U.S. economy. And the Republicans have been out to lunch on this. They haven't been able to fight back effectively. And besides, it was George Bush, a Republican president, that expanded Medicare with the prescription drug plan. So they don't have any credibility that they want to get government out of healthcare. There's no constitutional basis for government involved in healthcare. And now we're seeing what happens when the government gets heavily involved. It becomes chaotic. And when you can't run a website that cost well over $300 million in order to enroll people in it, I think the evidence is clear that the government should just get out of healthcare as they should get out of all the other major sectors of the economy and let the private sector and the nonprofit sector function.
Murray, President Obama gave the contract for the Obamacare websites to a Canadian company, which clearly failed in their deployment. And now we see he's pushing back the fines and the enforcement of those fines. Has Obamacare become a complete failure in its rollout? And is there going to be some sort of resolution, or are they going to scrap it, start over? What is going to happen here?
Well, I think what they'll try to do is to make it right over the next several months, which of course will delay the implementation of Obamacare, which is good. But on the other hand, you'd like to see this thing implemented so the American people can see how incompetent this program is, how it will adversely affect the average business, the average family, because there are always winners and losers when the government implements something.
Well, we've seen that the premiums, healthcare premiums, have skyrocketed for middle-income families. How is that going to affect the national economy itself? Well,
this is the whole point. When you have to pay more for healthcare, you have less money to pay for other things. So this will tend to weaken the economy as we go forward, as people have less disposable income. This is just basic arithmetic. If it costs you something to buy that's going to be a lot higher than you thought it would, that means you can have less money for other things, whether it's food, clothing, entertainment, you name it. And so the standard of living is going to continue to go down for the average American family because of all the regulations that the government's imposing on the economy. And this is another example of top-down, trickle-down collectivist economics, where the government has taken control over major sectors of the economy, and people, unfortunately, don't see the consequences right away. They're going to see them in 1, 5, maybe even 10 years, maybe even sooner, because the economy is so weak to begin with that the negative consequences of Obamacare may show up so quickly that people will be so frustrated that we'll see this thing implode in the not too distant future.
All right, let's talk about a resolution here. We've clearly covered the ground that there's an issue here in the American economy, the Federal Reserve, the value of gold being manipulated, Obamacare rollout, implementation failure. What can the American people do? Let's leave our viewers with something that they can actually hold on for some hope.
Well, I think what you've got to do is you can't be extravagant in your expenditures unless, of course, you're making tons of money. But the average American family, you've got to protect yourself from any economic chaos that's coming down the pike. Have 5, 10% or more in gold and other hard money assets. Buy good dividend-paying stocks or mutual funds or ETFs, exchange-traded funds, and start saving because the rainy day is coming. Because we know an experiment in paper money does not end well. That's been the history of money throughout the world, whether it's the Western Hemisphere or the Eastern Hemisphere. And for your kids, anyone who's in college and graduating, save as much money as you can and wait till the dust settles until we go back to a truly free economy where we don't have to make all these contingency plans, because it can be very chaotic down the road. But if you're an optimist about the American economy, which you have to be because of all the great products that are coming out there, all the goods and services that are being produced, we're still going to enjoy a relatively good standard of living for the average American family, but it's not going to be growing for most people. And so that's the challenge that we have going down the road, is that living standards will be flat for most people, increasing for the top 1% or more. And so what you've got to do, young people have to educate themselves so they can get a good paying job when they graduate from college, something I've been stressing as a college professor for decades now, and learn as many skills as you can, because you don't know when you'll be getting a job where you may have some background and skills that will be valuable to a future employer. So I tell people, be optimistic. Free market economics works. Collectivism doesn't work. And we just have to go through the ringer, unfortunately, over the next several years before we can go back to what we all would like to have: sustainable prosperity, more civil liberties, more freedom, more individual rights. In the meantime, we have to keep on battling through shows like yours to let the people know what's going on, and so then they can take the appropriate action in order to make sure that their family is prepared if any contingency comes down the road. We just bought some survival food for the simple reason: what if there's a food shortage down the road? You have to have a month, or 2 months, or 3 months worth of food around that has a long shelf life, because you just don't know if there'll be a food disruption in the future. I was prepared with a year ago. We had Hurricane Sandy hitting New Jersey. We were prepared. We had bottles of water. We had a radio that was battery powered, and all the other things you need to get through a period of crisis, which we had for a week to 10 days here in New Jersey. So again, you shouldn't live your life like the crisis is going to happen right around the corner. But when it does happen, you're prepared. You can ride out the storm.
All right, that was Murray Sabrin right here on WHDT World News. Murray, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Gary, and we'll get the word out so people can be informed about what they need to do for the future.
All right, stay tuned. We have the rest of today's headlines. We've also got news from Hollywood and a full report on the weather coming up right here on WHDT.